Welcome to the FitMoney Podcast, where we'll discuss something we all need through our entire life, financial literacy, but also asking the tough questions. Why aren't students learning it? Financial literacy is more than the math, and a behavior we'll need beyond the classroom. So we're learning how we can help students, families, and teachers build a new generation of financially fit students everywhere. On this episode, FitMoney Executive Director Jessica Pelletier chats with New York Times bestselling author Tori Dunlap, the founder and CEO of Her First 100K and host of the Financial Feminist Podcast. After saving $100,000 by the time she turned 25, Tori set out on a journey to fight financial inequality and build economic opportunity for women, a goal now impacting millions worldwide. On the show, Jessica and Tori discuss the reasons why these financial inequities exist, how we can inspire new investors, and what young entrepreneurs should know about their own financial literacy today for a brighter future tomorrow.
Hi, Tori. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, so much so on my end as well. So we heard your title, but I would really love to hear about your journey and what inspires you so much about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I graduated college in May of 2016, and I had dual degrees. I had a BS in organizational communication, which is like marketing with less math, and then a BA in theater. And the plan was to be a marketer. I went into marketing and my 9 to 5. I was a social media marketer, kind of a communications marketer. And I thought, okay, I am going to scale the corporate ladder. I'm going to be VP of marketing by 30. I'm going to stomp the pavement. I'm going to have a briefcase. I'm going to have a coffee in my hand. I'm going to wear a pencil skirt. And that's how I knew it was a fantasy, as I've never worn a pencil skirt and I hate them. But I thought that was my trajectory, was I was going to work my way up the corporate ladder and hashtag girl boss everywhere. And that was the plan. And I got into my first corporate job, and the, rose-colored goggles came off very quickly when I realized, oh, I have to make somebody I don't respect rich, and I have to ask to take time off for vacation, and I only get 10 days a year, and even if my work's done, I have to sit here and act like I'm still working. And then about 6 months after I got into that corporate job and graduated college, Donald Trump got elected. And I was 22 and coming into adulthood, but really into womanhood in a very different country than I think a lot of us expected. And I was trying to figure out what kind of person I wanted to be. What did I want my life to look like? And I ended up being the friend that everyone was coming to for financial advice and guidance. I had the privilege of a financial education growing up. My parents both didn't grow up with a lot, and so they're really committed to teaching me about money. And I thought that was the case for everybody. I thought everybody knows not to overspend on credit cards. Everybody knows how to save money. And of course, I realized very quickly when I was the expert among the friend group that that wasn't the case, and that in a society and in a world with so much inequality and so much inequity, I don't think we have any sort of equality or equity for any marginalized group, including women, until we have financial equality. And so I started the blog that later became Her First 100K in December of 2016. I was running it as a side hustle. I was working my 9 to 5 in marketing and slowly growing the business on the side. And the Her First 100K origin story was me attempting to save $100,000 at age 25. And it was partly to see, the number and see the comma in the bank account. But it was really the permission slip I needed to quit corporate. It was the amount of money I felt like gave me the runway to, be able to see if I had the wings to be able to take it full time. And so in 2019, I hit that goal, went to Europe to celebrate, got the call for Good Morning America in a pub in London, and quit my job 3 weeks after my interview. And it's been crazy to be an entrepreneur since then. We have 3 million followers. We have the #1 business podcast for women about money in the world. I have a New York Times bestselling book called Financial Feminist. It's just been crazy to see the amount of impact we've been able to have, and this journey of entrepreneurship, which was literally born out of the 2016 election, mixed with kind of my disillusionment of corporate life and my mission to be able to do something that was, values and mission focused, while also, improving my own financial prospects at the same time.
It's so amazing. What a journey, and so many questions that I have. But let's start with, $100,000. That sounds completely unattainable for so many people. But I'm sure now, as an inspirational, speaker and author, folks realize, well, if she can do it, there must be some secret sauce. And where do you tell people to start? So, take us on, your guidance, your advice to that, the younger you
Yeah.
of, okay, I want to do what you do. Where do I begin?
I will start first by really saying this, like, if I can do it, you can do it too, is not a mantra I live by. I worked really, really hard to get that 100K. I have a ton of privilege. I, had that financial education growing up. I graduated college debt free, because my parents had saved a little bit for college. And I also worked my way through college. And I would not have been able to hit that 100K as quickly as I did if I had student debt. And so I do want to acknowledge that anybody listening who's like 100K, especially that young, that's not for the average person, and I am well
Mhm.
aware of that and want to acknowledge that. However, there are parts of my 100K journey that anybody can emulate. The first is that I automated my savings. I set up an automatic transfer from my checking account to my savings account. We call it, of course, in the personal finance industry, paying yourself first. But if you can set up an automatic transfer, even if it's just $20 a month, that's going to make a huge difference. One, you're starting to save without you having to think about it. And two, it's like building your savings muscle, right? If you can get good at saving, even if it's just with a small amount of money, well, when you are making more money and you do have more financial flexibility, well, you already know how to do that, right? You've already strengthened that muscle. The second thing, and I talk about this more in my book, is I got really clear on what my values were and where I wanted my money to
Mhm.
go. A lot of people assume with my 100K, they're like, oh, you ate oatmeal and ramen and you never had any fun. And I'm like, no, I like traveled internationally. I went to Costa Rica. I ate out. I lived in Seattle in a 1 bedroom apartment. Like, there were ways that we could have both. There was ways we could balance that. And the biggest thing with spending is you don't have to stop spending money, but I need you to stop spending money on things that don't feel important to you, things that you're lukewarm about, or things that you end up, going like, why did I spend my money on that? Why is that something I spent my money on? So we talk through a whole values based spending practice in my book of like determining what those values are and figuring out how to find that balance. The third thing is I started investing really early. I opened up my Roth
Mhm.
IRA when I was 21, 22, and did everything I could to max it every year. And so, the beautiful thing about investing, or really, any sort of savings, is that you have compound interest, which of course is when your interest earns interest earns interest. So I wasn't just saving, like, that 100K was not cash. It was money I had
Mhm.
put into investments. And I probably actually had 75 to 80K, but some of that lifting, probably 20 to 30% of that heavy lifting, was done by investing returns or high yield savings account contributions. So if anybody has not started investing, and I know from statistics that especially women wait longer to invest than men or don't invest at all, investing is a huge portion of wealth building. And I would argue the most important part of the personal finance equation that we're not talking about as much as the budgeting and the cutting costs.
Do you think a little bit of that kind of short term, long term journey? You mentioned the statistic about women not necessarily, thinking about the long term. Why is that? Is that societal, or is there something that we can do to talk about how, really getting, especially the high yield savings account? My goodness, right now, you couldn't be better. So
It's like
how
four and a
do
half
we
percent.
really, you're right? How do we encourage that? Thinking about both, short and long term, especially for women.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to shameless plug, but I literally, researched for 4 years and wrote an entire book around, like, why do women not have the same education that men do? Why are women, you know, so shamed for their financial choices, and they feel so much guilt or fear or judgment around their money, and why is it keeping them from building wealth? And what we realize is that the personal finance equation is about 20% your personal choices, 80% circumstances, but no one's talking about it like it is. It's
Mhm.
20% getting your budget together, understanding the stock market, and it's 80% racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, a stagnating federal minimum wage, lack of paid family leave in the country, $1 trillion student debt crisis. That has much more of an impact on your day-to-day money than, like, whether you have a budget together or not. So we control the things we can control, right? And I think that is, learning about money from people that we trust and you know that can guide us step by step. But it has to come from, like, deep policy change, and of course that's not changing overnight. in terms of what we as individuals can do when we're thinking about investing, the biggest thing that I see with women is this fear of getting started. It's actually the number one reason women don't invest is fear. That's fear of making a mistake, fear of losing money, fear of investing in something that's too risky. And so what happens is this analysis paralysis, right? Where women do sign up for that Vanguard account, or they are like, oh, I think I should sign up for my 401k. But then they get to the point where they have to start picking things, and they're like, there are so many graphs and charts. It's all in jargon I don't understand. And they just hit the bail button. It's just like bail, 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 bail. And so what happens, of course, is that you're not building wealth and you feel very intimidated to the point where you're not coming back to like re-engage with that. And what I have to remind everybody listening, we think we're either good with we think we're either born with the good with money gene or we're not. We think we either are good with money and numbers or we're not. And I want to remind you, I'm a theater major. Guys, I majored in theater and marketing, and now I'm a financial expert. I'm a multimillionaire. Like, this isn't about numbers, actually. It's about learning a new skill. And if I want to learn a new language, or I want to learn to play an instrument, or I want to learn how to roller skate, there's going to be a period of time where I'm not good at it. There's going to be a period of time that feels deeply uncomfortable and vulnerable because I'm having to ask people questions. I'm saying the word toilet when I mean to ask for, a croissant or something, right? Like, there's so many moments when we're learning something new where we're like, this is scary, I'm uncomfortable, and I don't want to do this anymore. But the key with money, just like any other skill, is getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and also understanding that it is not your fault that you don't know this. Unless somebody taught you, like parents for me, or, a teacher or a coworker sitting you down and explaining what the 401k is, unless somebody taught you, no one taught you. So have so much grace and understanding for yourself, but also find somebody who can teach you. Find somebody, whether that's me or somebody else, who can engage with you and teach you step by step how to navigate this.
So important. And you're speaking our language. I here at FitMoney, we advocate for learning it as early as kindergarten, because everything that you're saying resonates with me. This is behavioral. It's not just math. It's not just balancing a checkbook or whatnot. Is making powerful decisions about your now, your tomorrow, and your future. And behavioral learning doesn't happen overnight. So I love your passion about that. Let's think about, you said that there's a lot of mistakes they're made in entrepreneurship, and that's part of the game. Risk reward means that sometimes you are going to lose. What are some of the more common mistakes? I think we saw, certainly during the pandemic, I think something that was maybe a good takeaway was that a lot of people started their own businesses.
Yeah.
They realized for whatever reason remote work wasn't working, or perhaps they were laid off. But talk about some of the common mistakes that you might have seen made all too frequently that perhaps we can get in and stop before they continue.
Yeah. 3 biggest mistakes I see with entrepreneurs. One, we were talking about this with investing before, is that people don't actually get started. And I was a victim of this. I had the idea, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I thought to myself, I can't tell you the amount of times I thought to myself, and the amount of times I hear this from people, is they go, well, I need a logo though, and I don't have a logo that I like. Oh, but I need a brand color. Oh, I need a website. Oh, I need a tagline. Oh, I don't know how to run an Instagram, so I'm not going to do it. And here's the thing. Her first 100K, that was not the concept when I started back in 2016. I look back at graphics or my website that I made back then, and yes, I cringe, which means I've grown, which is great. But you have to do it in order to figure it out. You have to start in order to figure out what your brand color should be, what your logo should be, what your audience should be. And you won't know this unless you're doing it and learning as you go. What's happening is you're putting barriers in front of yourself as your excuse to get started, right? Because you're like, oh, I am feeling productive. Okay, but I need this thing first, and I can't do anything before I have this thing. Elizabeth Gilbert, author of Eat, Pray, Love, Big Magic, she has this great quote that says, perfectionism is fear in stilettos. And that's what's happening is you are wanting everything to be perfect because you're afraid. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of, screwing up. You're afraid that somebody's going to laugh at you. You're afraid you're going to look back in 10 years at that website that looks stupid. But here's the thing is you have to start anyway. And you have to understand it's not going to be perfect. You have to release that and know that, like, okay, I just need to get started in order to keep progressing. Second mistake I see with entrepreneurs is that, especially women entrepreneurs, they think they have to do it all of themselves. When they do start gaining that momentum, when they do start feeling like, okay, I got some business coming in and things are going well, and then suddenly they're completely overwhelmed. It shocks a lot of people to know that I actually hired my first person when I still had a 9 to 5 job. And I couldn't afford anybody for more than like 5 hours a week, someone who was very entry level, low level, who I, paid probably 10, $15 an hour, but like that was what I could afford then. And they were doing like some graphics for me and social media posting and answering emails. The moment you can outsource, do it, even if it's just for a small amount of time. There are good people out of there. There are good people out there who you need to trust in order to grow your business. And I think it's one of the reasons we've been so successful is I have done as much as I can to hand things off and to be really intentional about who we hire. And those are some of the mistakes I've made, is hiring people that, I look back and I'm like, there were red flags in that interview. I shouldn't have hired them. But I will say, hiring somebody, even if it, doesn't end up being a lasting forever relationship, is so important in terms of growing your business. And finally, I need you to know your numbers. We were talking about math and numbers before. This is actually one of those things, though, where I do need you to keep track. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be incredibly detailed if you're just getting started, but you need to know what your cash flow is, not only as a business owner, but as an individual. You need to know, what are my income sources? What money's coming in every month? What money's going out for my expenses? And it's the same thing personally, right? What money's coming in either through the business, through my side hustle, through my 9 to 5, through this contract, through this client, and what's going out? What am I paying in rent or my mortgage? What am I paying in daycare? Or how many, what am I paying at the grocery store? So you have to have a general understanding of your numbers, even if you are a right-brained entrepreneur. And I love viewing it as a game. Like, there's something liberating about viewing your revenue and numbers as a game. I can't tell you, especially in the early days where I did have directly more control over this, where, I could track and say, oh, there's 3 days left before the end of the month. We've made $9,500. Let's see if we can do $500 in these last 3 days. And there's something so liberating about knowing your numbers so intimately, to be able to just like say, okay, if I pull this lever, I'm going to be able to make this amount more money. And viewing it as this like fun challenge or game for yourself allows you to see your numbers as your friend rather than your enemy.
I love that. I think the delegation piece is so important. I think that's whenever I'm asked in job interviews, what could I do better? I think delegating is my answer because I think
It's
women,
so hard.
especially, we are just so ingrained to just do it all and do it all really well. So I love that piece of advice, even for me personally. You mentioned, I'd love to go back to your parents, and how fortunate you were that you had parents who actually talked to you about money. And you are correct. That is incredibly rare. Research has shown that parents often will feel more comfortable talking about sex and drugs than they will their
Death,
financial
politics,
statements.
religion. We'll talk about anything before we'll talk about money.
And I have 2 young boys, and I will happily take out my mortgage statement before we talk about the other things. Why do you think that is? And do you see it changing at all in our culture now that there is so much on social media and we are becoming a much more transparent society, I think? Do you think it'll change, that parents will start to open up a little bit?
God, I hope so. I am seeing it change concretely just in general society. I think, again, the success of her first 100K proves that people are interested in conversations. They're being sought out. And a sweet thing that a lot of people say that feels also unfortunate is so many people in our community have told us, oh gosh, just probably thousands at this point. They tell us this is the only place in my life that I feel comfortable and safe having a conversation about money. Not with my friends, not with my family, sometimes not even with their partner. So people want this and they're seeking it out. And I can even just tell in the landscape of, there are more podcasts than ever about money, right? And I think when we launched our podcast, Financial Feminist, in May of 2021, we were the only women-focused, women-hosted show in the top 30 business podcasts. We're now one of probably 5 or 10, even in that 2 years. So I think that definitely the market is shifting and people are looking for this advice. In terms of parenting, I am not a parent. I can't speak to direct experience. I hope it's happening. I hope those conversations are happening about money. And I hope especially that conversations about money are happening in the same way for children of different genders. If we're using a gender binary between girls and boys, and of course we know that there's genders in between that and all over, but the conversations that parents have with their male children are very different than the conversations they have with their girls. Still in a patriarchal, heteronormative society and relationships, we're seeing that women handle the day-to-day finances, the budgeting, the coupon clipping, right, the grocery shopping. Men are handling the wealth building. And this starts in childhood. And I have a section in my book where I talk about this. The toys we give children, even now, are very gendered, right? We give boys trucks and Legos and things to build and things to create. And we tell them that their value to society is in their creation and in their ingenuity and in their, self-reliance and critical thinking. What do we give girls? We give girls dolls, easy bake ovens, bridal veils. I think it's crazy that we give 2 and 3-year-old children another child to take care of, right? Metaphorically with their dolls. So we're telling girls that their contribution is caregiving, which is beautiful and altruistic and lovely. And I'm not saying don't, but we're not saying the same sorts of conversations or saying the same sorts of things with our boys. And so that's even, before we even start talking about earning or money or an allowance, even the toys and the skills we're teaching them and how we teach them to own certain parts of their personality or to develop certain skills is gendered and different. And so my hope is that even before we have a concrete conversation about money going in, money going out, we're having conversations about how we raise children, and especially with gender roles and the gender divide.
I think the work that we do, while probably minor on the scale of entire parenting, hopefully providing parents with those tools, certainly free resources, like you said, there's podcasts, there's opportunities, there's now fun games to really just set that level playing field when it comes to understanding money. I always say my definition, which I know is different for everyone, but financial literacy is about being resilient to things that are often out of your control. Just like you said, with policy changes that need to happen, they aren't happening overnight. So understanding how to make those decisions in good times and in bad times. And we're certainly seeing that with the economy today. So what's next for Tori? What's Tori doing in 10 years, or what are the goals for you?
Oh man. The interesting thing is I don't make the 5-10 year plans anymore. I'm such a goal-oriented person, but I also find that it drives me a little crazy. If you would have told me, let's say, 5 years ago that this is what I would be doing, I probably would have laughed in your face. Like, this was not part of the plan. And also, I knew I was capable of all of the things that her first 100K has done, but also, that wasn't part of the plan. And so I think that the biggest thing for me personally, and this is cheesy and probably not the answer you were looking for, but it's the true answer is I hope I'm happy, I hope I'm healthy, and I hope I'm making an impact in the world. And that feels okay to me. I have accomplished a lot of professional things already in my life. I'm 28 and, I'm Forbes 30 under 30, and we have a New York Times bestselling book, and we have this podcast, and we have all of these things to be proud of as a team. I'm personally most proud of, the amount of growth and development I've been able to have, the challenges of being an entrepreneur that actually have nothing to do with all of the flashy headline things, but everything to do with navigating team dynamics and running a completely remote team and trying to show up as the best CEO I can. And those are the things that I think are really going to be exciting challenges as I move forward in these next couple years. And so personally, I just hope that, yeah, I'm happy, healthy, making an impact. And professionally, I hope I'm doing the same.
I think that's a really fantastic outlook. I like the being happy. I think we forget day to day that that is still a number one goal, I think, for everyone, is to just feel satisfied with the choices that you've made and the resources that you have. Tori, this has been really fun. I've loved getting to know you and your story, and thank you for all that you're doing out there. And I look forward to a long, continued relationship. And
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today on the FitMoney Podcast. Whether you're a caregiver, teacher, or student yourself, there's plenty of great K-12 resources to begin or continue your financial literacy journey at fitmoney.org. Visit the show notes for more from today's guests and financial literacy activities for the classroom, at home, or on the go. We'll see you next time, and until then, happy learning, earning, and saving.
The FitMoney podcast is presented by FitMoney, the leading K-12 financial literacy curriculum providing free, unbiased financial literacy resources. All opinions, products, and references during the show are not endorsed by FitMoney and are solely opinions of the individual. FitMoney does not claim any responsibility for external resources referenced during the episode. All FitMoney products and episodes are provided for educational purposes and are not professional advice.